Hi and welcome to Manny's Making. So this is going to be number 2 in how to do this cuff bracelet. So we're going to start with a different stone, and we're going to do it step by step as we go through. And we learned sort of to develop a design. So as you can see, I have a bunch of beads. I have some colors here that I'm going to be putting together. So basically it's sort of a garnet, darker reds, sort of a pinks, creams, silver, and some greens are what I'm going to put together. I know that sounds really funny, and I wish I could show you easily, but there's a bunch of different colors I'm putting together. Let's see, this green and some cream, and so I'm going to be using it with this green stone. So you can sort of see a little bit of the color palette here. There's just some stuff that I was working out the outside. So you're going to need to start with your lacy stuff, or whatever, your Pellon, or your foam, your felt, your stiffened felt, whatever it is that you're using that you're going to bead on. And you need to cut yourself off a piece, at least as long as you want your bracelet to be, plus a little tiny bit, because you don't want to, have to bead right to the very edge if you can help it. It's much better if you give yourself a little bit of fudge factor that you can cut off later. So I just grabbed mine pieces, my lacy stuff. This is lacy stuff, happens to be 8 and whatever, not quite 8.5 inches wide. So I just grabbed a strip right across. I just marked it off at the 2-inch mark because I don't want it any wider than 2 inches. Now, when you're doing a cuff and you're doing 2 inches, if you notice, it goes quite high up on your wrist. It doesn't like sit in the crook. It sits higher up on the wrist if you're going to do a full 2 inches. So measure up here. That's the widest part, because on my wrist it's narrower here than it is up here. So make sure you measure up here on sort of how long you're going to want your piece to be. So I'm not going to keep mine at 7. I'm going to have the 2 inches wide, sorry. I'm going to keep the center sort of piece here at 2, and then I'm going to narrow it down some, because that's the way I prefer it. So I have 8.5. I need to grab, I'm going to say, so I need a 7.5 inch is what I need total for if I'm making it for me. So I need 7.5 inches. So that's what I need total, 7.5 inches. So that gives me a good, little bit on each side, but I need to include the clasp. So that's the second decision you need to make. How much space is your clasp going to take up? Well, the clasp itself doesn't take up a lot of space. If you sort of put the clasp against, even in the bag here, if you put it against the end here, it's like a 1/2 inch, but then you have the beads coming out that take up a little bit of space. So it's about 3/4 of an inch. So I need 6 3/4 is what I need total. So 6 3/4 is here, from here to here. Let's move this over a bit so you can see from here to here. So this is the math part of it that's a bit of a pain, but you need to figure that out, right? So what I like to do to start with is I have a piece that's this big, 8, and we'll move this both out on a side a little bit, so 8.5, and so I need 4 1/4. So 4 1/4 is my center point, and I'm just going to put it down on both couple of lines to give me my center point. And then I have a 2-inch strip, so 1 inch is my center point. So I'm just trying to get this one on the screen. So I have 1 inch. If it's a 2-inch strip, 1 inch is my center point, so it doesn't matter where on the ruler I am, as long as, so that point right there is sort of my center of my project. And you could actually draw lines if you want. You just have to make sure. Usually I measure from both ends so that I get 2 measurements and I know that I'm good. Okay, so right here would be my center. I don't know if you can see that, if I didn't do it dark enough, so let's do it darker for you guys. I don't need to have it that dark when I'm actually working on it, but we'll go darker so that you guys can see it. There, you should be able to see that now. Okay, so there's my center point, and what did I say I needed? 6 3/4, because I have to minus the clasp that I need to put on. So that's a 3 1/8 in either side. So I need to go 3, so that's 1 2 3 1/8. So to here is, that's half, eighth, yeah, right there, 3 1/8. And I'm going to measure a couple places, 3 1/8. So what I'm doing is I'm setting out my outside parameters, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Doesn't matter, as long as my ruler is, you know, at a particular inch mark, 1, 2, 3 1/8. And let me do it again. We're setting the outside parameters of our beading area. It's really key that you sort of know where you're going. Now you can just bead and see where you end up, and that's fine too. But then you need to make sure that you're doing it for the full width, because you might go the full width. That if you go the full width of the 2 inches, then you know, that's a wide cuff. You're going to need the extra space. And, you know, if your clasp measurement's going to be, you know, 1.5 inches, because you're using some other kind of fancier clasp with a, you know, brocade in the middle or something, you could be too far, and then the bracelet's too big and you can't wear it, and that would be a real shame. So setting yourself some parameters is always a really good thing. So now I'm just gonna make a line between these 2 lines here, and I know that that's the outside edge of where I want to go. Okay, so I just do this on both sides. So this is sort of the technical part of this. So what do I want my bracelet to do? Do I want it to flow in and out? Do I want it to, you know, be sort of rounded? Do I want it to come back out to a, you know, to sort of do an hourglass shape on the sides? Do I have a preference? Do I just want to freeform? I can, you know, so you can think those things through and figure out what you might want to do. I don't know where I want to go with this one, so I'm actually going to leave this open, and I'm going to work on the one side and sort of play and get an idea where I want to go. I do want this one a little more flowy. The other one's much more structured, so I'm going to, you know, probably have movement on the sides, and I'm not sure how that movement's going to all pan out. The only thing I have to worry about is that my movement pans out that the width of the space left here and the width of the space left here are the same. So you can start by giving yourself some limitations, in the sense that if this is 2 inches, if I want to make sure, because my clasp is this big, that I don't end up going the full 2 inches, because I'd have to use a different clasp, that I want to come in some, then I can, so it better matches the end here, I can give myself a limitation of, we'll take off 1/2 inch on either side. So we'll take off 1/2 inch on here, and 1/2 inch on here, which leaves me with 1 inch left at the back side of my wrist here. I have 1 inch left. So I have those marks. I can see that when I start to freeform or do whatever I want to do, that's what I'm left. You can use all kinds of things to shape. Let's say I wanted the end round, and I wanted it to be round up to that point. I can do it this way, and then, you know, take a bottle and put it around to do a shape. Maybe I want it to go over. Obviously that would make the bracelet too long, so we don't want to do that. So you have to think about logistics as far as how this is all going to work. The second thing is that I know that this here is my center point. This is where I have to glue my cab, if I want it in the center. If you want a bunch of cabs, you can have one out here and one over here and one over here. Then glue them where you want them. If you want, you know, you have some kind of spacing that you want to sort of figure out. This is my outside. So this here I don't want to bead on, and this here I don't want to bead on. So I have this to hang on to, and I have my beading happens on the inside. So as you've seen before on one of my previous embroidery videos, you glue on the cab. So the cab has to be glued on, and this cab is, where's my little, I have an empty envelope here, there it is. So this cab is, I just have it here, it's 25 by 18, it's a resin oval cab, it's an emerald swirl pattern. So it's got some swirling and stuff in it. It's kind of cool. It has some movement, and I kind of like it, and I like it with the colors that I've picked. So I'm happy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some glue on the back of this, and I just use E6000. So let me just grab my E6000, which I hadn't pulled out before. Of course, it's down in a cup. So as you can see, I use it. Now, one of the little tricks, a lot of people use this top end to open up their E6000. I don't. I actually use like my awl and put a little tiny hole. So I have more control over the glue that comes out. So I have, I don't know if you can see it, but the hole inside there is really tiny. I don't waste as much glue that way, and I don't find it keeps gooshing out. It does make it harder if you want to put a lot of glue in something, but I don't use a lot of glue because I'm going to secure this in with Peyote, so, or Bezeling or something like that. So all I do is I just take it and smear it literally with my thing, and as you can see, it doesn't have to come all the way out to the edges. It's just enough glue on there that it's going to stay put. Okay, so I put this down and with the glue side up for a second while I put the lid back on the glue because this stuff's stinky. And I can see I've got a little bit on the outside of my cab here, and I don't want to have it any there. So now I just got to center this. And I tend to bring this so my head's over top of it. But you're not going to die if it's not absolutely perfect. So then I grab it and squishy down so it sort of squishes it into the material, and now I let it dry. And I let it dry for about an hour. And when we come back, we're gonna do the peyote around, and I'm gonna do it fairly quickly because we're going to do the 2-bead backstitch first, and then we're going to do the peyote fairly quickly because you can go back to my other video to see how to do that. And that'll get you through this video, and the next video we'll start doing the frame work. Okay, so I got everything ready for the second part, and now that my cab is dried, I'm good to go. I have my KO. I'm using KO. You can use Navajo, KO, whatever, Sunoco, whatever thread you like, as long as it's a good sturdy thread and you don't have to worry about it breaking down. These ones are made of synthetic materials, so they hold up really well. You can use a thin sort of a quilting thread if you want. I've waxed my thread already and I've put a knot in it. I have a size 11 beading needle. I tend to use 11s, 10s, 11s, or 12s. 11 sort of the in-between, and I'm trying a new brand. I'm doing a pony because I keep snapping my needles. So I pulled out some beads. So these ones here are white Navajo opaque, and they're in Tohos. And for going around the cabochon, because I want to cover up some of the green and just tone it down a bit so it's not quite as overwhelming. In the center of green, I want to sort of bring in some other, so I can move into the more pastels and a little bit lighter tones. And I have two different 15-0s out because I'm not sure which one I'm going to use, so I'll tell you which one we end up using when I get there. So I'm just going to move my thread out of the way. Everything's waxed. So this is the same as the other video, and hopefully everything's good and you can see it. So I'm just going to go to the back and take my thread with a knot on it, and I'm just going to, somewhere you can sort of see the light sort of shines through and you can see the darkness where the cab is. I don't know if you can see that. See the cab there underneath? So I can see the cab underneath. So somewhere where the cab is, I'm not going all the way through. I'm just skimming the top. Not that much of it. Just trying to skim a little less of it than that. There we go. Sometimes you have to bend your fabric a little bit. Now I'm probably going to get a pile of wax show up on the side of this. Yeah, see? Don't worry about it. And then I'm going to put it through again one more time. Just this last little, almost like taking a little stitch, so I can create a knot. And I'm just creating this is my place where I'm going to create one knot. So I'm just going to go through the loop once, so I don't have a big wad of knots at the back. And I do a flatter knot where I put my tail through 3 times. It's like a surgeon's knot, and it's a flatter knot. I don't get a big lump on the back, so that when I cover it with suede, I'm good to go. So now I got to bring it up to the front. And again, like I told you before, I sort of like to go somewhere, you know, start in the middle. I don't tend to like to start at the top. I can start at the top to guarantee that things are centered. It depends on what you're planning on doing. I'm going to just do a one tone around it, so it doesn't really matter as long as I keep the numbers even. So I'm picking up 2 of my beads, and hopefully it's focusing. I can't really tell I've changed the lighting in here a little bit, and it's easier for me to see my work, but it's harder for me to see the screen. So I'm putting 2 in. They just came up beside the bead. I'm going to go a little faster because if you need a slower, sort of more methodical version of how to do this, then you can do this. You can go back to the other video and check that out, and it should appear in the screen. And I will, for each section, I'll put down the things that I used in it. And then when we get to the final bracelet, you'll see the full list of everything that's needed. So you can check there if you need to get your full list once we get there. So I've got the 2 on here. I'm just bringing them down to where the thread's coming out beside the cabochon. And I can give it a little bit of space and put my needle straight back down. Just try not to loop myself around myself. And that's the hardest part of all of this is with the thread that I have. It's not catching on everything. Coming back up the back side, and I'm coming back through those 2 beads. So I'm moving things around as I need to. And I tend to use really short needles. I'll show you this. This is the needle that I usually use. It's really short compared to this one. For the most part, I only use this when I absolutely need to. It's great for loom work and some other things. It's a beading needle, and this is what most people have at home, so this is why I'm using this for this. So I don't normally put them down like that each time, but I'm going to do it for you guys so you can see. And then I just come in front of it, and then I'm going to come back 3. And then I'm going to come through the last 3. So I'm always putting down 2, coming back 3, putting down 2, coming back 3. And I'm going to do this all the way around, and we need to have an even number. So when I get to about here, I'm going to sort of pay attention to, you know, how close I'm getting. Am I going to be able to fit in 2 more or not? And then we'll go from there. So I'll come back when I get down to this end, and then we'll start the peyote, okay? Okay, so I'm back, and I have just a couple more beads to go, and I put 2 on my needle, and I can see that I have space probably for 3, but I'm good with the 2. So because I need to have an even number, because I'm going to be putting peyote on this. So I'm going to just take it straight through the next bead or 2, rather than just 1 or 2 beads. I don't want to go that far up. Come on, be nice there. Come on, you can get out. There we go. So I'm just taking it up through a couple of beads, and I can see there's a little bit of space in there, but some of that'll iron itself out. I don't have enough space for 2, so, and I know that I'm tighter down here, so I think I'm good. So I'm going to go back down, and I'm going to come back quite a bit, because what I'm going to do is force these beads up a little bit. So I'm coming up one here and coming down the next one, and I'm going to take it and put it between where I want it to go down and then push, and it actually is pulling those beads apart a little bit. And then I'm going to do it a couple of beads up, or a bead up from there. So this is just my row. So I want to come down the next one. I don't know if you can see that, so that it's forcing it. I'm just watching the corners here as I go. It forces it towards each other. So I'm going to come there. Try not to get caught on this bottom corner, because that's never any fun. And I'm just going to put one in the middle of these 2, and I should be good to go. But these are the 2 that I added, so I want to space them out. I'm just making sure, and of course I got caught on the corner, which is a common occurrence. And again, I'm going to come up a couple more. Back down. And I'm just spacing these a little bit more equally. There is a little bit of fudge room, so you can see that when I put my needle between them, I can force them apart a little bit, and I'm good now. I'm happy with that. It's close enough that you're not going to see it when I do the next row. So now I got to bring it back up. I'm going to peyote, and that's what we did in the other video. So I'm going to bring my needle through a couple of beads. It doesn't matter how many, just a couple. I just want to get away from where I'm working right now. There we go. So peyote is pick up a bead, skip a bead. So I'm coming out of right here. So this is a bead I'm going to skip, and then I'm going to go through the next bead. So I picked up a bead on my needle. I'm going to skip this bead here, and I'm going to go through this bead here. And again, I'm not doing this terribly close up, but that's what you get. You get the one bead sitting on top of the other ones. Okay, so I've gone through one. I'm going to skip one, and I'm going to go through the next one. So this is, I don't know if you can see that I'm actually bending the entire thing so makes it easier just to go through one bead. And they'll want to lay down like this. Don't worry about it. Just push them up, put them where you want them. So you should see that I have on top of one bead, well, I should be on top of that bead. Should I skip two beads? See, I might have already messed up. Yes, I skipped two beads. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm going to go fix this and go back, because that'll throw the numbers off when I'm done. Okay, so if you're doing it right, this is what it should look like, and everything should be happy. So you got the beads coming up. You're going to do this all the way around, and then you're going to do another row all the way around, and then we'll come back, and I'm not sure how much more I need, so we're going to go from there. Okay, I've only done the one row, just in case you need a refresher on how to step up. When you get close to the end of the row, you're going to have 3 beads left. You need to put a bead in this space here. So you need to grab your bead. You're coming out of this bead. You're going to skip over this bead and go through this bead, not the one up here. This bead first. Okay, so I'm going to put it sideways. And you could flip this and move this. It's fine. Okay. And then you put it through. And this is a weird angle. Okay, here we go. Does not want to go through. There we go. Got it in. But how do I get it to come back out? There we go. Got it through just the one bead. So I just want to go through the one bead. And it is a bit of a weird angle. Don't worry about it. And then you're going to step up to the one that you sort of default want to go to. Okay? And now I'm going to do another row. And as you can see, it's not coming up that high yet on the cabochon. So I'm going to do one more row for sure, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I'm back. So I've done the 3rd row and the 4th row. So if you look on the side here, so this was my first row that I put down 2, and that got pulled up. And then I've added 1, 2, 3 more rows. So I have 4 rows altogether. The first row that I put down, which is a 2 bead back stitch, and then I did the 3 rows, and I'm happy with the height that it's at. Plus, once you get up to a certain height, we're not narrowing it all, so it'll just make a big cone. So if that's what you want, great. But if it's not what you want, this is at the point where I have to start bringing it in. So I need to grab another bead, and I've decided I had silver out, and I had some. These are Opaque Beige 15 Tohos, so I'm going to use them so that it just sort of keeps the color. Usually I do a contrasting color or something, but I want all the prettiness to be sort of on the outside of, going from there. So this will sort of end up looking almost like a center of a flower. So the 15-0s are really small. I'm just picking them up, and I've already stepped up on this row. You can see that I stepped up and I'm coming out of this bead here. So I'm just going to go through and do 2 rows of 15-0s. And as you can see, it makes a little bit of space when you put the first one on. There's a little bit of space. It moves around. And I can, once I get all the way around, or halfway around, I start pulling to sort of tighten this, to cinch it all in. I'm probably going to need 2 rows, but I'm going to see. 1 row might be enough if I can get it to cinch tight enough. So I'm going to do the 1 row, and I will come back. So as you can see, I've gone around just once. There's only one of the row of the 15s, and I think I'm good. I can get them tight enough, so I'm just going to reinforce and go around it at least one more time to like past where I started and get that secured, and then I'm going to work my way down to the back, and I'm going to, I don't have a ton of thread left. I might have enough to start, but probably not, so I'm going to put some fresh thread on, and I will meet you back and we will start that first row of goodies on the outside. We're on to the next part. So what I did is I picked a series of beads. So we have a whole bunch of different beads, and I'll list them below so you can just look below to see. But basically, this is a new storm duos. I have 15 O's, I have 11 O's. These are disc duos. These are 3mm fire polished ruby colored beads here as well. So you have to get your spacing right. So what I did is I put them on the thread and coming up from the bottom, sort of where I figured it would need to start, so that this becomes the center of the top, because I still have that line there. And I'm just bringing them around, and I had to do it like 3 or 4 different times. This is the combination I wanted, but so that and I'm just pulling it tighter, but I don't want it to, I don't know if you can see that at the bottom. Let's just move that up a little bit. If I do this, it buckles. See how it buckles up? I don't want it to buckle up. I want it to lay flat. So the spacing has to be so that it actually lays flat. And the beads are nice and, fairly tight to the unit. So this actually would go into this green bead here. So there's some space there. So get your spacing right, figure that out, and then what you do is you go around and put it through a few more, and so we'll do that right now. So this is my spacing is right. It took me a while to figure out, so I'm just going through a few of these beads just like as if I was bead weaving. So I'm going through the first one here, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, because I am going to, it's almost like I'm going to do a small section of bead weaving here. Okay, so we're only worrying about the same holes. We haven't changed holes at all. I decided to just use a little bit of thread on this one, and then I will, so see how I can sort of pull this around? I don't want to do that because then everything's off-centered. It's not where I want it to be. So, you have to be careful as you're doing that. So then I'm going to take this, and I know that this quad here is my first piece, so I'm going to put this through one more bead here. So this foursome of storm duos are my top, and I'm going to actually put a big melon bead up top here, and some other beads, and it's going to look really cool. So this is my first row of my frame. So I'm taking it and I'm pulling it tighter around, making sure that they're laying good, and I want to make sure that this and this on the two ends stay lined up the way that they need to be. So I'm coming through here. Once I know that it's in the right spot, I'm going to take it down on the other side and go straight down and back out the other side. And just like, it doesn't matter that it moved, it's fine. Okay, just like the rest of them, I'm going to pull tighter again, make sure that I'm still good. So I'm going to come up between the beads, between each of these beads, only once between this area, once between this area. I don't have to come up twice. I might, just to make sure it's really good, but I'm basically going to loop my thread over and tack it down all the way along so that it's all lined up exactly the way that I wanted. And so I'll show you one more time. So we have this on this side of the red one. So I'm going to bring up the next one, and I'm just going to bring it up. And it's a little harder when you get started, especially not to pull it to a place where it's going to come up in the wrong place. So I'm going to come up. I'm putting my thread where I want it to go down, and again I'm going to bring it down there right beside it, and I'm going to tack that down. So that's going to hold those bottom beads in place, and I'm going to continue to do that. It's back down, so I'm going to come back up on the other side of this one, and then the other side here, and so forth, all the way around, tacking all this down. And I figure I'm going to run out of thread and have to put a new one on. I'll put the new one on and continue to tack down. And I'm going to get these all tacked down, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to do the second part of this, because I still have second holes in a lot of these beads that I have to deal with, and that will finish up my frame piece. So I'll be right back to show you that. Okay, so I started the second row on the outside because I needed to figure out there's a space in here that's quite large, and how I was going to fill that, I tried several different stones and couldn't figure out how to fill it, and as you can see, I did figure it out. So I'm going to show you how I did it. I'm going to freeze this here for a second though, so that you can see, you know, that this is a 3mm. These are the, you know, what's going around on each row, and I could do row 1 and row 2 and what they are if you want, underneath the description, under the show more button, so that you can know what goes on. But I'm basically creating a frame, and now this is not sewed down, it's it's basically bead weaving at this point. The thing is I'm trying to fill in the spaces. Now if you're doing this with darker colors and you have a light weaving material that you're embroidering on, you're going to want to color it, and you want to do that before you put any of the beads on. So if you're doing, you know, navy blue beads everywhere and the white's going to really show a lot, then you're going to want to, because I'm using the cream, it's okay if a little tiny bits of the cream, like in here there's a little bit of cream that you can see, that's okay. I'm okay with it because it's close enough to the colors that I'm using. But if you're not, then you're going to need to color that area with a permanent marker, let it dry, you know, with a Sharpie, let it dry, and then once it's dry, then you can put the second part on, or I would actually even do it before you do your encasement there. So I'm going to just go from here and show you what goes in between each of them. So, and we have one more of the foursome to go, so you can see what's going on. So I have a bunch of different beads out here. This is an 11-0, and it's in that cream color. So I got to put that in there. And I'm watching, as I'm figuring out my spacing here, I had to watch that there's not any big gaps anywhere, and that these are still lined at the top and the bottom. As you can see, they pretty well cover the full 2 inches, so I don't want to go any wider than this point. This will be my widest point here. So the next one here, now this is a big gap to fill, and it needs a lot of stuff to go in there. So I thought, how am I going to do this, right? So I started with, I just did going across, and I tried different, combinations. So this is a 15, an 8-0, and a 15. 11-0 and a 15. And I went across just like this. I'm going to show you what it looks like, because this is part of what I'm going to do. And as you can see, there's a big, sorry, I hit my cord here. So there, stop wiggling. Okay, so there's a big gap in here. See the big gap in there where you can see tons of material? So I thought, well, I could do another pass maybe and come up through the bottom. I tried coming down for the bottom and up and around. I tried several different ways. Nothing seemed to work. So I finally figured out something that would work. So what I do is I go through the first one, then I pick up a 15, then I pick up an 11-0, and then another 15, and in this time, instead of going across, because I'm picking up the white, or the cream colored 11-0, I'm going to come back down through the other side of the disc duo, and out. I got to turn this around so I can get at the right angle, and then I'm going to come back up, but I only want to go through the disc duo. I don't want to go through anything else, so I'm making sure my needle doesn't go through anything else, and that's why my needle's bent. Well, that happens. That's part of life. So this lays down kind of right along there. And I tried it without the extra 6-second 15-0 in there. And what I discovered is I could see the thread from the 11-0 to the thing. So I needed to fix that. So now I need a 15-0 and an 11-0 in the same color, because I'm coming back up the other side. But I'm going to catch this last 15-0 of this trio here, and then come across and catch the 15-0 on the other side. And watch what happens when I pull this, and I keep hitting my camera cord. I had to plug it in because it's dying. My battery's dying, so and I keep hitting the cord when I pull my string. So as you can see, it pretty well fills in that space quite nicely. It's all attached. I can, it's not like flopping around in the breeze. So now I can put my green one back on, and as if I was going straight across and into the next section. So I just take that and go straight across and into the next section. I'm trying to pull it without hitting the camera now. Okay, so, and because of the white bead there, it sort of all sits. You can see that it all sort of hugs in the corner, all in here. And now when okay, so I'm back. trying to resolve this. So that's the, as I said, I'm going to be tacking down in each of those beads as I go. I'm also going to be tacking between, all of these beads like I did before, so that all things lay in. And when I'm done tacking between all of the beads, I'm going to run a thread through the very outside edge. I'm not going to worry about coming back down through and again, but I'm going to go through the very outside edge and just reinforce that. So anyway, so that's you've seen how to do it around here, and now we're going to show you around in the little centerpiece here. So I just put a cream one, and this is an awkward position, and I just got a knot in my thread because of it. So give me a second here, guys. Okay, let's see if I can do it this way. Okay, so I have that one, and then I did a silver, and then I had one of my big melon beads, and I'm gonna have to check to see what size they are, but I think they're 6mm melon beads. I'm pretty sure 5 or 6 millimeters. Anyways, they're a good size melon bead. They have lots of texture on them, and they're lots of fun. So I just and that spreads that a little farther, which then crunches this in a little bit more, which is like perfect. So figuring out your spacing is part of the hard part of these picture frames, because you have to fill in all the spaces. When you're doing normal bead weaving, wow, okay, when you're doing normal bead weaving, you don't have to worry about, so I'm catching the bottom, I'm catching my cord, yay! You don't have to worry about sort of filling in all the spaces. You don't want to be able to see through this, like I can see there, but it's very minimal. And you don't want to be able to see here, so you have to think about your spacing in regards to the fact that you're going to be tacking it down flat once you do it. But you can use beads when you do like a frame like this. In a you have to tack them differently than normal, but it allows you to do different designs and patterns with the beads that you wouldn't necessarily do one bead at a time if you were just putting them down in strips or rows. So it gives you a whole new look, and I kind of like this. I don't know, it's kind of I don't know what you'd call this look, but I kind of like it. I'm still not sure that I don't want a little red right here, and I may still go back and come in between and just put a little tiny bit of a red 50, in the middle there, just to add a pop. But we'll see as we go how much more cream and red all right, so let's do that funky dude little thing again. So a silver, a green, and a silver, and these are Picasso beads that I'm using, these particular green ones, because they have different shades of green in them. Try not to catch on which I just did, try not to catch on the corners, down at the bottom. That's the one. And then I did a silver, a white, and a silver, and I came down and just through the bottom hole of that dual bead and back up. So just like in bead, wow, I'm having all kinds of fun with knots and stuff. Just like in normal bead weaving, I'm sort of thinking about it as a bigger picture rather than just a flat surface. So again, a 15 and then an 11-0, and I'm going to come back up through this 15 on this side, come through and through the other 15 if I can all in one, because picking up that last 15 is a little harder, trying to avoid everything. And I'm going to pull my thread down my needle a little bit. Okay, so that's getting it nice and secure, and it's actually good and solid. Green and a silver again, and back through the other side. So now I've come across all of them, and you can see that my spacing is good. I have got a full frame. I'm going to freeze it there for a second for all of you, and hopefully it's focusing good. There we go. So you guys can, stop, freeze the video at this picture and write down if you need to what goes where. These are 15s here, and this is 11s. So, and this is an 11. I didn't use any 8/0s in here. I did use some 3mm, and I think this might even be a 4mm bead. It's not, it's a little bit bigger than that. I can check for you. It'll be in the description below. So get to this stage. This is all for today, and we'll start planning the bracelet next. We've got a good start. Get this far. Pick your crazy beads and have some fun, and we'll move on from there. Take care and keep on making from Manny's Makings.
you.